I guess we need an intro. Let's go.
Gordo, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Entrepreneur 360 podcast. So let me start off by saying, firstly, welcome to season 3 of the podcast. This is the first episode that I'm going to be posting post launch of the podcast, and I had a whole other plan for for season 3 of the podcast. The goal for season 3 was to continue going down the journey of lessons learned by myself and business lessons and personal mindset lessons and all that. But I was absolutely blown away and overwhelmed by the response that I got from the podcast, from the launch of the podcast, man. I've had close to 10 people reach out to me just within the last 2 days, and we launched about 4 days ago, just coming out to me, just saying, hey, dude, I completely get where you're at, your journey. It sounds like I'm in the same place. I've had a few people reaching out saying, dude, I really want to do what you're doing. I just don't have the balls for it. And then I've had quite a few people reaching out saying, dude, I've been on that journey and I've come out the other side. I'm sort of still on that journey. And I would love to share what I've learned, because it sounds like what you're going through is what I've learned already. So that's kind of what season 3 is sort of shaping up to be, is a bunch of different conversations with different really interesting people that are in my life, or have come through my life at some point, that I haven't spoken to in over a decade. More than a decade, some of them. Speaking of, I want to introduce to the podcast today a man by the name of gordlaws. Now, just by way of a little bit of introduction, Gordon and I go way back to 2003, 4 probably, when I started working at FHM magazine. We worked together probably for about 10 years. Gordo is, he's an old mate that, you're just one of these guys who you work with in a past life, and then you just lose touch with, and you continue to follow each other on socials. And eventually something comes along and goes, hey, dude, I should reach out and let's connect. And that's what this has been. So Gordon, welcome to the podcast, bro. Firstly, thank you for reaching out, and thank you for your enthusiasm, man, for what I've done here. And I'm just so stoked to have you come on board and share what you've gone through, because I think you've got a lot to share as well.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure, man. It's so good to see you. Like you said, we hung out a lot in a past life.
Drank
and
a lot.
around about 20. Well, we also played some football, and
we did.
We did some good work. We made some good content. Yeah, but I mean, back in those days, we worked hard and we partied hard. I mean, we can get into the FHM era, what it was actually like, how perceptions have changed around that brand, in some cases very unfairly. I mean, I don't want to immediately go off on a tangent, but I don't think FHM has been crucified in the current political climate. But I think one of the very last things that happened after you and I had already left, but when the brand was on its way out, was there was a huge controversy involving 2 young staff members, and a whole lot of people came out of the woodwork circa 2014 in the brand's last year and said a whole bunch of shit about, it was in the beginning of wokeness, right at the beginning of wokeness, when it was just becoming a thing, and spoke about it like, my God, like, I feel ashamed of this thing you guys are describing, but that's not actually what it was. That's not what it's actually like. So it's been fairly misrepresented. I don't think it's been like witch hunted and burnt at the stake, but there are a lot of people who I think see it as like something, because it's been 10 years now since it got closed down, and a further 4 or 5 years since you and I were there during its heyday. I think it's a lot of people who didn't know it at all, or only sort of people who knew it well, read it regularly, or were involved with it. But I think some people who had a peripheral understanding of it have come to think of it as something like a hustler magazine, or but the vast majority of the content we made was like very high quality. Like, you did the gadgets and the technology stuff. I handled everything that wasn't like ladies. No, we're not naked, but like ladies in swimwear. All of the investigative journalism and the humor-based journalism. I would manage a lot of people like you who would do like expertise-orientated content. So the point, as I said, I don't want to go off on a tangent, and I just have, but the point is that we worked hard and we played hard. We had a football team for 7 years, the mighty FHM Pumas. We played a corporate, we played C and B division. We played C and B division corporate 7-a-side for 7 years. And you were a regular fixture in that team. I was the captain and manager of the team, and I was the 24th best player in the squad. And so we didn't just go drinking, and we didn't just talk shit about chicks in bikinis. We made some really good content, and we worked hard, and you handled the gadgets, the technology stuff. So we would always have between 2, and I don't know if those notification sounds, A, you can hear them, or B, they're coming.
It's all good. Doesn't
Okay.
But
Anyway.
and yeah, I get what you're saying. And listen, I mean, I think it's always interesting to look back and whatever and see what perceptions, and as you say, I still get it to this day. Like I was going, oh, for FHM, remember that. But I think, it's neither here nor there, and I'm not. I think it's something that it's for another day. I think the real conversation for me, from your perspective, was when you reached out, and I remember this actually many years ago, seeing on your personal socials. So I hope you don't mind me saying this, and I hope this isn't too confronting for you, but you were a big guy.
I'm an open book, bro.
Yeah, bro, you were a big dude, and actually you lived that physical persona in the magazine as Captain Beer. For those who don't know, and if anybody who's listening, an old South African male, in case you don't know what Gordon looks like, I've just said Captain Beer. All of a sudden, you've gone, oh yeah, dude, I remember Captain Beer. So you lived that persona of like what was essentially a pretty unhealthy lifestyle, and that was why a few years after, I think it was a few years after you left the mag, I saw on your socials you had basically, bro, you'd gone from one of those big fat dudes into the skinny male, and you're like, I remember thinking, Jesus, Gordo, well done.
I was always male, but I got buff.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Just for the sake of your time, just for the sake of your timeline, Slottage, I left FHM in 2010.
Yeah.
And I lost all of that weight 2 years before that. So I started I started to lose weight at the beginning of 2009.
Yeah.
And by the time I left FHM in 2010, I'd lost 78 kilos in 14 months in 2009 and 10. And I kept that off for most of 4 years. There was a little period in the middle of that 4-year time where I kept the weight off, where I gained weight for half a year and then lost it again. So I had this 4-year period of being in shape, where for a middle year I started to like gain weight again, but I managed to lose it again. But that was all super gym and exercise orientated, and it was like low fat, low GI carbs. I'll get into all of that shortly, but the point is, I did it one way, and I knew that it was unsustainable. So towards the end of being at FHM, I lost all that weight, and for my last year at FHM, I was in very athletic shape. Then for 4 years, I was for the most part in good shape, and then around 2015-16, I started to put the weight back on again, and then I gained it all, and then I gained like 50 more kilos. So I was always a fat oak from when I was little. Then when I met you in 2003, I was a fat oak. Then for 8 years at FHM, I became like the brand ambassador, mascot, Captain Beer, the like professionally a fat oak. I will say that FHM didn't make me fat. I was already fat. And it was like, this is a good opportunity to make content, because I like to jawl. I like to interact with crowds. I like to perform. So FHM has got an overweight oak who likes to perform, managing the content. It was a perfect symmetry. They didn't like caused me to be fat. I was fat already, and I made the best of it. But then I lost weight, and then I regained weight. And so by 2020, by the time lockdown happened, I was exactly the same weight I was, the heaviest I'd ever been. And for the first 5 months of lockdown, I gained the most weight I've ever gained, the fastest I've ever gained. Like the bottom completely fell out of it. So I went into lockdown at 178 kilos. And the biggest I'd ever weighed in prior to that in my life was about 10 years before, about 11 years before, I'd been 179 kilos. And I was like, under lockdown, I'm going to sort everything out. I'm going to eat lank well. I'm going to take this opportunity. It's going to be like a month that we all going to be locked away, and I'm going to like take the opportunity. But bro, I just like my issues with food and stuff, I've never in my life, it was like an out of body experience. Compared to my own worst eating, was eating double the most I ever had before in my life. Then I basically, and this is something we'll have to get into, give it its own little chapter, but then I basically died in my sleep. I had a couple of nights where I was waking up choking on stomach acid and unable to breathe. And the third time that happened, I had some really difficult to explain sort of mystical experience, which might have been something spiritual and religious, depending on what you believe, or it might have just been there was no oxygen to my brain, so I started to trip a little bit.
Yeah.
Either is possible, but to me, I felt like I basically died and then just survived and came back seeing everything very differently. And the next day I went keto. It's now 4 years, and I then lost 130 kilograms in 14 months. So just to backtrack, I told you how I lost 78 kilos in 14 months when you and I were working together. About a year later, I lost 130 kilos in 14 months. And the first time I was gymming twice a day, and twice a day, Monday to Friday, and once on the weekend, so 11 times a week. And the second time, I only started exercising once I'd lost half the weight because I was like bored.
Yeah.
And so totally different worlds. And the food that I eat this time is just, I enjoy it so much. There's a lot of things I don't eat, but what I do eat, I thoroughly enjoy. I exercise because I like it. So I've lost a shitload of weight twice.
Yeah.
The second, and then regained it once. The second time, lost even more weight. Was like even in almost twice as much, not quite, in the same amount of time. But it was much easier and a much more pleasant experience. And I'm so far having a much easier time sticking with it. So that's the timeline. Fat Bastard forever. Start working with you in 2003. Fat Bastard professionally. 2009 and 10, lose a whole bunch of weight. Keep it off for about 4 years. 2014, 2015, start to gain weight again. By 2020, much bigger than the biggest I've ever been. And by the time after 5 months of lockdown, I've gained like an extra 30 or 40 kilos on top of that. And I'm like 210, 220. We'll never know because my scale wouldn't weigh me over 180 kilos. Like my scale max out at 180 kilos, which is the weight that I went into lockdown at. And I then put on so much weight that like none of those clothes fit me.
Yeah.
So we'll never know what I weighed, but I was using a measuring tape when I started to lose weight to measure myself. And according to my doctor and a bit of Googling, I was somewhere between 220 and 250 kilos.
So
we'll never
it's
know.
Interesting because, and that's why I thought also it would be interesting to have that convo with you, because the reality is, from my perspective, the Exitpreneur 360 journey that I'm on is very much, it hasn't ever been about losing weight for me. Thank God I was never a big guy. And the picture that I posted to launch the podcast with was a body transformation picture that I've just become accustomed to taking on a regular basis, because I did the 75 hard challenge and then 75 live hard for a year and all that. So really,
I want to know more about this, but but please continue.
Interesting one. But for me, the weight loss piece of this journey is not even a big part of it. I don't give a shit. I've actually got a pretty stern directive in my life about numbers and metrics. I don't really care about them. It's kind of where I went with my running as well. I don't check my watch. I don't check how much mileage I've done. I don't give a shit how fast my pace is. I just go and I do it. But it was interesting because you are someone for who that part of the journey really stuck out. The guy that I'm meeting with, another old mate as well, who's got a very interesting journey, and his touch point into the Exitpreneur 360 journey was more around the resilience and overcoming adversity, because of, I'd posted about overcoming my cancer and my brother's violence that happened.
See, I want to know, I need to know, I know you've covered it in previous episodes of your podcast, but I need the short summary, and it's probably beneficial for new listeners who are, don't necessarily want to go back and re-listen to everything else. At some point before we're done, I'd really like you to give me like the 5-minute quick summary of everything. I saw you with the one that I reached out on Facebook. I saw your before and after picture. You look like you've gotten well into shape. It seems like you've made changes in your career. And then I reached out to you and said, shit, dude, we should have a catch up, because A, it would be great to talk to you, and B, I've got a bit of a story myself. But I want to know
it's pretty straightforward. Long and short of it, when I was 12, I had a brain tumor. Guys, if you haven't heard this and you haven't seen this, it is in season 2. If you go look at season 2 episode, there's only 3 episodes in season 2. Go listen to them. First one's about overcoming my cancer as a child. I was 12 years old, I had a brain tumor, cancerous, chemotherapy for a year, radiation. Thank God came through that. My family, and not just myself, but I talk a lot about how it impacted my family and the support system, the structure, the community that was around me. I then in episode 2 of season 3, I talk about my brother was shot in an incident I was about 18 years old, so many years ago. This is many years ago. He was shot in an incident in a hold up at a restaurant. Told he would never walk again. Went through a bunch of operations for many years, and eventually, to this day, he's got 4 kids, thriving. He's got a very successful business. He walks with one leg works with the other one doesn't, but he walks. And then my old man got sick with cancer as well. So he also was very sick for about 10, 15 years. My dad was sick, and unfortunately we lost him during the COVID. He was in hospital for something, and operation went badly, and he ended up getting COVID. So that part of the story, and that's what I say, is it's quite...
Sorry to hear that, Slottage.
Sorry, what's that?
I'm sorry to hear that, man. I didn't know your dad had passed.
Thank you, bro. No, I talk about it in those episodes, and I'm quite open about it. Like it's all of that stuff, as bad as it was for the family, as bad as it was for me, it was all the reason that I've got this insanely ridiculous positive outlook on stuff. And for me, it's almost the core part of my story is like, hey, that resilience and that. But then I didn't recognize that the losing of the weight that I'd lost and the dedication that I'd put into exercise, not with a goal towards losing weight at all, but the mindset stuff that I picked up that had helped me do those things, so that I was able to post that photograph and be vulnerable like that on social media. When you reached out, I was like, fuck, dude, there's guys who've done this almost because, and you've kind of hit on it a little bit with your story of, you waking up and almost dying kind of thing. There's people who've done this because it's a matter of life and death. So I was interested to
100%.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, I'm just some fucking who was maybe a little bit overweight, who lost some kilos and has gone through a bit midlife crisis. But you're a dude who actually went through this stuff, and you, as I say, matter of life and death. Like, what did that do to your mindset? Like, and again, you've also done it like up and down. I didn't know about the yo-yoing up and down. I just thought, hey, you did it once and then you lost it and then you stayed off. Like, what kind of mindset techniques and like, how did that impact the way you viewed goal setting and getting up in the morning and kicking your own ass and saying, dude, get the fuck up and go for a run, because this is...
So did you not pick up that I'd regained all that weight? Because I was back to being as big as when you and I used to hang out together, and even bigger than you've ever seen me. And I was like very active on social media. That was for like 5 years. I was back to being as fat and more fat than I'd ever been before. For like 5 or 6 years, from like, I started to regain weight in like 2015, and by like 2017 I was back to the biggest I'd been, and it took me until August 2020 to start losing weight again. So I was like super fat for like 5 years again. I was only in shape for 4 years, from 2010 to 2014. But anyway, the yo-yo thing, and you were just saying now all those words you just said about the drive and kicking your ass and getting yourself up in the morning and kicking your own ass and all of that. And I'm glad you referred to it that way, because I've come to realize from like I know there's people in the world who've lost more weight than me. There's people who've lost like hundreds of kilos. I've done an estimated 120, 130 recently, and I knew it was 78 previously. In the previous effort. And when I was at the end of high school, I lost almost 50. It was 48.5 kilos I had to lose. And I celebrated hitting goal weight when I was in matric. I'd been a fat kid always, lost weight over about 9 months with a dietitian, and celebrated hitting goal weight by eating 2 pizzas. Do you remember you used to get Scooter's Pizza? They had like 2 large pizzas in a double box thing. And I celebrated reaching my diet goal by eating 2 adult pizzas. That was like, it was always doomed to fail. But you talked about kicking your own ass and getting it up in the morning. The first time, when it was all gym and all super Spartan energy, death or success, I will succeed, very rah-rah, eating steamed chicken breasts and ostrich patties and steamed broccoli and brown rice and so-called good carbs, which is like saying, hey, my brothers are, for the record, neither of my brothers are at all crackheads, but it's like saying my good friend or whoever, this is my brother or my husband or whatever, they're like a massive crackhead, but we give them the best possible crack. Like we buy a Colombian A-grade
quality
crack.
stuff.
It's the good crack. So don't worry about my alcoholic relative that's drinking themselves to death. We give them like fucking Moe only. So like good carbs. So I'm like eating exactly the wrong shit. thinking, and I'm going to gym twice a day, every day for years. For like, it took me a year and a half to sort of get to lose. It took me 14 months to hit goal weight. And then I continued losing weight to lose like another 10 kilos to get properly buff. And then I kept it all mostly off for like the next 4 years with a little wobble in the middle. So for like 5 or 6 years, my life was get up, go to gym, do my cardio without having eaten, fasted cardio, go to work, on the way home, gym again. Now I've eaten like 3 carb meals throughout the day, all of which are miserable and tasteless and just eating a whole of pre-prepared sadness. Then gym again in the evening on the way home, weights, and then home, and then once on the weekend get in the gym. So 11 times a week I'm going to gym. I'm going to gym like 1.5 times a day on average.
Right.
And pre-preparing Tupperwares of like totally tasteless food that's like, I don't even realize that this cup, doing the carb rotation where you eat smaller amounts and then larger amounts. And some days I'm eating 1.5 cups of brown rice 3 times a day. Now that was like extreme discipline and extremely military. And I had this like death or success attitude. It was like army vibes, you know, you will succeed. And I knew, I always refer to it as ice skating up Kilimanjaro. I always knew that the moment I stopped running on this uphill treadmill, I would just go straight down. I knew that I would get sick and I couldn't train because I had a cold. And like to keep my eating right for that week that I was off gym would be like the hardest thing in the world. If I didn't train, I felt like my diet would fall apart psychologically. If I didn't diet, I felt like my training would fall apart psychologically. But if I was doing both right, they made the other one like, I had so much gym, so eating this cuck is okay. I'm enjoying it. This is what I love. Go gym. But is my lifestyle.
That's a huge mindset thing and I mean, I guess I equate it a little bit to 75 hard, what you just said. And I bring that up because it's quite a big theme in the podcast in the early days of what I've been through is a 75 hard challenge. And it's the Andy Frisella, one of the things that he discusses in it, he talks about what you've just said. He talks about 2 voices in our heads. We have a bitch voice and a boss voice. And like the bitch voice is the
wolves, and which one you feed, right?
Exactly. Like the bitch voice is the one where the alarm goes off and you go, fuck, dude, I just don't feel like it today. I'm going to hit snooze. That's your bitch voice. And your boss voice is the one that goes, right, dude, the alarm's gone off. Get out of bed and go and do it. And I think you've just hit on that. What you had to keep telling yourself when you were eating that gruel was, I love this food. I love this food.
Yeah, I love the punishments. I love the grind, the Jogongs, and it's bullshit, Slot. Like, I'm sorry if you've gotten good results of it and you're like a firm believer in it. And I know that a lot of people, including myself for a long time, get great results with that sort of a mindset, discipline, like the 2 wolves, the boss voice, the bitch voice. But I, the second time, lost almost twice as much weight as fast. So it was like not quite double, but like it was 78 kilos and 130 kilos. So what, I don't know what the maths of that is, but it's about 1.5 to, almost not quite double, 1 2/3 as much weight in the same amount of time. And I literally sat on my ass the second time. It was COVID. You weren't allowed outside. It was proper lockdown.
So what was it? Was it just proper eating?
My whole body fit on a 2-seater couch, which I only got rid of when I moved to Cape Town, like 2 or 3 in 2021. This broken 2-seater couch that both my thighs touched an armrest, bro. I was 220 kilos at least. I couldn't exercise. Getting up the 1 step to my front door, I had to grab the security gate and pull myself up 1 step. I would go to further away grocery store. I had one a kilometer from my place in Douglasdale and another one 5 k's away. And I would go to the one 5 k's away because there were 4 steps that you had to go up. But it hurt my knees, dude. I couldn't exercise. I wasn't legally allowed to leave the house. And just standing up was like really, really hard work. We're talking like not an oak who's a bit fat and doesn't look as good as they looked in varsity and is worried about the long-term effects of being 10 or 15 kilos overweight. Dude, I was starting to struggle to walk. And I lost the weight, just fell off me. So and all I did was I stopped eating carbs and sugar and I started eating at meal times. Now, I'm not saying that everybody now must go keto and that everybody's got a problem with any and all carbohydrates, because it could be a 4-hour podcast of its own. Insulin is bad for everybody. Your body needs to make insulin in order to use carbs and sugar. Everybody's body needs to make insulin or they can't use carbs and sugar. Your body will deploy insulin when it detects carbs and sugar. But some people's bodies create an appropriate amount, and other people's bodies create much more insulin, and some people's bodies are good at then getting rid of the insulin once it's in the body, and other people's bodies struggle to get rid of the insulin. Insulin, if anyone watches Rick and Morty, is like a Meeseeks. It can only die once it's fulfilled its task. That'll make no sense to some people, and people who are fans of Rick and Morty will know exactly what I'm talking about. Insulin wants to break down carbohydrates so that it itself can be broken down and go away. So if now there's insulin in your body and the carbohydrate's got nothing to do, it screams for more carbohydrates. So the same way some people are lactose tolerant, like me, I can eat only cheese. I have a tattoo on my leg of cheese because like it's part of what saved my life. I eat cheese every day. I have the best, dude. I eat the best food ever. Like I eat fully keto. But the point is not now everyone either has the choice between keto or failure. Some people can handle carbohydrates the way some people can handle lactose, and some people absolutely cannot.
Yeah.
What we are faced with, though, as a society is that 100% of us in a Western society, you can argue South Africa is not necessarily a Western society, but we eat a Western diet. 100% of people eating a Western diet are eating an unnatural diet. Like, it's unhealthy. It doesn't mirror what we ancestrally used to eat. And I'm not talking about 60,000 years ago hunting and gathering in like in a completely past, like before the first fires and the wheel was invented. I'm talking about like 100 years ago. No one on earth ate anything like how we eat. 200 years ago, the wealthiest kings in the world, kings and some queens, like the equivalents of the 100 richest people on earth, maybe if they wanted to, could recreate our current diet. If they set their mind to it and they put all their resources into it, they could have like that much bread, that much sugar, that much of the shit that we take for granted as being normal. And 300 years ago in the 1700s, not even God could have eaten a diet as far removed with the technology. You couldn't get shit from this part of the world and mix it with shit from that part of the world and make something that is as far away. And I'm not talking about only like morbidly obese people in like America drinking 4-liter 7-Up sugar drinks and whole pizzas and chasing them with chocolate eclairs. I mean, an ordinary person. Because I was able to, in 2022, I did 4 months of working and traveling. I had a remote job. I spent a lot of money traveling the UK and Europe while working, because I can walk everywhere, because my body is capable. Like I'd hit goal weight, and like 3 months later, I fucked off overseas for a South African winter. And I would go into supermarkets everywhere in Germany, England, Ireland, Scotland, and see what people are buying. And it's like boxes of shit. And you get a person who's in reasonably good shape, and they're wearing their gym gear because they're either just coming from or going to gym, and they're trying their best, but they're like buying boxes of fish fingers, and it says on there like diet or light because it's got less of something, but it's processed garbage, crusted in processed garbage. And things like grains and wheat, and that is just not food, bro. If you take a human being, and I'm going to stop with the rant now because I've pretty much made my point, but if you take a human being and you put them in a chalet with all of the luxuries, a jacuzzi, a bed, a dog for companionship, another human being for companionship, and they've got water and everything you can imagine, but all they don't have is food. And for 100 kilometers to the right are sunflowers, and for another 100 kilometers to the left is wheat. And you give them a hand pestle and say, knock yourself out. They'll die of starvation in a month because that is not food. The amount of shit that you have to do to seeds and grasses, wheats and oils to make them edible, not just food, but so that you can even consume them at all, is drastic. And that now then makes up half to 2/3 of our diet. So whatever you're suffering from, whether it's weight, inflammation, a mystery illness that won't go away, you're just generally never healthy, we don't eat food, bro. We as human beings are now 50 to 80% of what we consider a normal diet is not actually food. And that's the problem. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Gord, one thing I want to do, one of the other themes that's really big for me in this Exopreneur 360 podcast and of my journey over the last 2 years is community and having people around you, family, friends, support system. It's a bit of a dichotomy that I have going on where I say, hey, man, it's all on you. Nobody cares about you. You've got to get shit done on your own. But I also, in other parts of the podcast, talk about how actually you've got to rely on other people around you. You've got to take the help and nobody does anything big alone. where do you relate to that in your weight loss journey that you've gone up and down? Because obviously you weren't alone in all this. Like, who was there? What kind of support did you rely on? What things could you not have done without help? And what things did you have to just suck it up and do yourself that you can remember?
Oh, it's interesting that you call it a dichotomy, because it kind of is. It's like I've been working a lot with overweight people. The first time I lost weight, we went into all that. And this most recent time, we went into all of it. Both times I'd have people reach out to me. And both times I was quite in the public eye. More so the first time because of FHM. But also I'm not by any means famous, but I do some podcasting with Gareth Cliff, and people know me from
Yes,
that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I've been involved in the music scene. I always say that being famous is profitable. So I'm just well known enough for it to be irritating. But a lot of people are aware of this, and they're watching, and they come to me for assistance. And I always say to people, like, like I help people. I've had some people have some amazing results. I've seen some people lose. I've got a guy who's lost 66 kilos. He's got his total that he had to lose is more than that, but he put almost all of them back on again. So this heartbreak and this roller coaster where, you know, you can help people, and they go and they lose 66 kilos of 130 they need to lose, but you can't make them and so it's both, exactly like you say, it's both. Only you can do it. No, you can have you can have me and the 9 other most experienced people, because one of the points I was going to get to, we had a technical issue and we had to take a little break. Your editing might have made it look like that wasn't the case, but I was finishing up my story about how we're surrounded by, our diet that we eat isn't food.
Yeah.
And the consequences of that are not just overweight people. Some people never have a weight problem, but they're sickly in some way or another their whole life. Like, you're constantly tempted by, it's like alcoholics being offered drinks all the time, and then there's billboards saying you should drink, and not just that it's okay to drink, you should have a drink and try this drink, but like, you need to drink in order to survive. We feel like we got to go to the supermarket and eat whatever shit is there. Like, only you can make those choices for yourself. Only you can avoid the temptation. But having a blueprint and a map and someone to show you what, because there's so much bullshit out there, Slot. Like, there's so much bullshit. Like, for every scientist on YouTube with an actual PhD who will show you the science of why what you're doing will never work, there's another person also with a PhD, also from a university, who says there's 1,000 peer-reviewed studies. Like, we have so much information at our disposal, and it's so conflicting that, like, just to sift through it is very difficult. So to answer your question, I felt like I was dying in the night. It's happened a few times. I realized, like, this is it. Like, this thing was always going to kill me, and now it's happening. And I just woke up the one day with this understanding that trying to do what I did before the hard way, with all the gym and the miserable food, I've tried to, after that fell apart, I've tried to restart that at least a dozen times, maybe 25 times. I've started that diet again and gotten somewhere from 2 weeks to 2 months into it, and then it falls apart. And I was just like, I had some understanding, which is a whole nother episode about spirituality and stuff, which I believe comes from a higher power. I had some understanding that the way I did it before wasn't going to work, and that there's other ways. I call it the old Pretoria road. Just because you once, with your donkey cart, got to Pretoria on the old Pretoria road, so that's how you get to Pretoria. You've done it before. It was a hard several-day journey. You nearly starved. You got attacked by bandits. Your wagon broke down a few times, but in the end, you got to Pretoria on the old Pretoria road with your donkey cart and your donkey. But it's 10 years later. That road is in worse condition. Your donkey is older. You've got one now broken wheel on your wagon. And every time you try, you don't get there. You think it's your own fault. You might not be aware that just 10 kilometers behind you is now the N1, and O's have got Teslas. There's other ways. So I had I had a friend of mine, that sort of guy, he had lost a bunch of weight, not as much. He was 30 odd kilos he'd lost, doing keto, and he had said to me, I'll teach you the basics, and he talked me through it. It was COVID, so there was nothing to do except sit at home and watch YouTube. I found a really good cooking channel, an O called Headbanger's Kitchen. I had my best friend Janine. She was in Dubai, but everyone was on lockdown, and she was, every day we were talking to each other, and I was giving her my results. I was measuring myself because my scale couldn't weigh me. So I had a person who really cared and was genuinely interested, and a couple of close friends who I was like talking to about it. I had, as I said, I had a mate who had been ketoing for a year or two and was like, talked me through the basics. And I had some really interesting YouTube channels off the top of my head. Headbanger's Kitchen, really fun and good content with great recipes for keto, because that's how I did it. And Yeah, so it's both, man. You need information that you can kind of rely on. Like I said, I'm not trying to convert everyone to keto. I've lost a lot of weight doing the opposite of keto before, doing low fat, high amounts of low GI carbs. I was going to say high carbs, but high eating carbs, but low GI carbs with low fat. I've lost a lot of weight that way, exercising plenty. And I've lost more weight faster, eating no carbs whatsoever and eating high fat food, sitting on my ass, and then starting to exercise because I enjoy it. So there are a lot of ways to do it, but you need like mentors because there's just so much, dude, it's overwhelming. And like the point that I made before about how we're surrounded by non-food and misinformation, like we as adult educated people with businesses and families and children and cars and degrees and whatever don't know what's in food. It's not, I'm not criticizing anybody. I was the same. I nearly died from it. I've suffered from it my whole life. I'm now about to turn 43. I was 39 when I started finding out what food is, what's in things and like what it's made of and what people and animals eat and like what's available in nature and what's bred by humans and GMO'd by humans and combined from ingredients. Like you take 6 things that are not food and combine them in the right way, add water and bake it, and it becomes kind of food. Like we have so much misinformation out there. So, you know, you got a mentor is very important. A source of information you can trust is important. People that are like interested in your journey and want the best for you and supporting you is important. But in the end, you walk the road alone. You can have cheerleaders. It's like going and supporting your relative at the comrades. Being on the side of the road with an Oros and going, go Steve, go Steve. That's going to get you through. That's going to get you through when you're thinking of giving up. But they're not going to jump on the road and run for you.
They're not going to lift your legs.
You can do this on your own with no help, locked in a cave by yourself. Or you can have 1,000 people cheering for you all at the same time and get nowhere. So I think you do it on your own, but psychologically, having reliable information from a source that you trust with a route that works for you. If you can't do the keto thing, it's not going to work for you. If you can't do the gym all the time, it's not going to work for you. If you hate gymming, you might lose weight for 6 months or a year or 2 years or even 4 years, but eventually you're going to go, fuck it, I'm not going into that place that smells of formaldehyde where butts leave their weights lying around and there's just dickheads everywhere and I've got to deal with traffic. Like you either have to find a method that works for you that you love and you can live with, and that makes sense. You're not just doing something because some professional, some advisor is saying you must do this. And when you want to know why, they either don't know or say, just don't ask questions, just eat just this and not that. I want to understand why it works, why I feel the way that I feel, why the exercise must be done this way and not that way. So I mean, I can ramble.
That's awesome.
I know we're short of time.
And as I say, it's such a big theme of the podcast for me is that idea of support and community and help around you. I think you've really beautifully summed it up in a really great, succinct way. What you've just said in the last minute or two around your analogy around the comrades, I think is fantastic. It's a great way to look at it. I think it's a really unbelievable piece of advice and tip. And that's the last thing I want to ask you, because you have gone through a journey, and I don't by any means pretend, no matter what picture I posted on Facebook and no matter how good I look before and after, dude, I lost 6 or 7 kilos. Like, I don't even know how many kilos I lost. It's not important. As I say, I don't give a shit about numbers. They don't mean anything to me. What means good, what is meaningful to me is how I'm feeling about and where my mind is at. But I know that the journey that you went on in terms of the weight loss, the back and forth and the yo-yo and up and down, that piece of advice you've just given in terms of like community and having people around you that can rah you is a beautiful piece of advice. What other piece of advice would you give to somebody who's listening to this, who's potentially sitting on the couch right now with their legs touching both sides like you were, going, I want to be like, this conversation's motivated me. I can hear this guy's done it and he's got
my sexy man.
Bro, you're gonna get us.
You can fit a whole nother one of me in here, bro. It's like a Sharpay's balls. And because it's winter, it's about 3-4 kilos bigger than it should. Actually, it gets even saggier in summer because I'm more active.
Thanks. Now this video is going to be banned on YouTube. Thanks.
It's now become X-rated. Yeah.
So just before we end, like, what other piece of advice would you give? Like, what's key, besides what you've told us already?
I'm ultimately going to write a book about this, and then I'll have something to sell. But for now, I don't have anything to sell. But what the book will say is it'll be thick like this. It'll be a proper book, but it'll open with saying, if you don't feel like reading this book, or you're just looking at this in a bookstore, or you've in a waiting room, or you're at your mate's house and you only have 5 minutes with the book, here's the cheat sheets. set meal times and only eat at meal times.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can do to fine tune when those meal times should be, and the gaps in between and what the optimal amount. But eat at meal times. 1, 2, eat what's on the plate. Once you figured out how much food you need to not be starving and not always be full, eat what's on your plate. 3, hunger is good. Like, being starving all the time is not good for you. It's not sustainable. It's bad for you psychologically. You can't starve yourself. But if you're never hungry, you're eating too much.
Yeah.
It's almost like we've got a built-in system from God telling us when to eat. You do.
You need to listen to it,
If you are always eating before your belly is telling you, bro, I'm lank hungry, you want to be hungry for half an hour to an hour before you eat. Every time you eat.
Yeah.
If you've got, say, for example, eating at 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock, if you starving to death at 10 a.m. and you've got to hang in till 1, you're not eating enough.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be starving but if you get to 1 o'clock and you're not hungry, it means your dinner was too big. So you for 15 minutes to 45 minutes before eating time, your brain must tell you, like, dude, I'm hungry. And then you're like, good that you're hungry. It's handy that you're hungry because it's almost time to eat.
Yeah.
That needs to happen. And then the 4th thing is eat real food. I could do another 17 hours on keto. I believe it's the way everybody should eat. It's the most natural way to eat. Carbs are not natural in our diet. Carbs are not available. Very few parts of the world have edible carbs at all. Stop me now because it will go for 4 hours. But forget even keto. Forget about that. Eat fruit, eat carby vegetables, eat whatever you want, but eat whole food.
Yeah.
You can take whole ingredients that are everything that you start with is food. And you can, in your own kitchen, combine it. You can grind it. You can mince it. You can blend it. You can do what you want with it and deassemble and reassemble it. But you must buy it whole. Yeah. Everything you start with must be whole food. So it's 4 things. Eat at meal times. Eat what's on the plate. Hunger is good in moderation. And eat whole ingredients. Make sure everything you put in the food is food.
Beautiful.
That's it. That's all you need. And you can fill in those gaps with whatever you want. Another thing I want to add is that to people who think they can't, like, I always thought something was wrong with me. Even when I was in shape before and I was exercising all the time, I knew I was fighting some demon. There's some voice that's been there since I'm little. It's always making me overeat. And I know that I might be fine for now. I'm like a alcoholic or a drug addict in recovery going, just for today, I can be strong enough. But this demon, every time I'm at a braai and I'm eating my little Tupperware of shitty food, I'm wishing I was eating what everyone else is eating. Something's wrong with me. I'm not the same as other people. I can't stop eating when I'm full. In fact, the more full I am, the less I can stop eating. There might not be something wrong with you. You might be just very sensitive to the diet that humans eat in the time you've been born on earth. We eat a very unnatural diet. What the correct diet is, scientists are having cage fights about. But the average thing that the average person believes is normal isn't. Yeah. So you might not be broken. You might not be the laziest, most useless. You might, all the self-hate you might have for your inability to control yourself. Like, I my whole life thought that I'm just a shit person. I'm disciplined in other ways, but I can't control how I eat because there's something wrong with me. Maybe you very more sensitive to this non-natural diet than other people. So you might not be a dickhead. You might be struggling with what is essentially quite a lot of poison in your day-to-day routine. So yeah, that's what I'll tell people who need a bit of help getting started. You might not be as broken as you think. You might just need to find that, like, start eating food and see how that does. Yeah. And yeah, eat at meal times, eat what's on the plate, whole food ingredients, be hungry a couple times a day for a short while.
Yeah, amazing. Dude, I couldn't sum it up better, and I couldn't ask for a better rant at the end, because one of the other core themes of this podcast for me has been action, not motion, action. And practical advice. And I want people to walk away from an episode of this going, fuck, I now know what I need to do. And I think you've summed it up really beautifully. Dude, thank you so much for doing this. Before we go,
such a pleasure, Slot.
Please give a rant. Where can guys find you? Where can people follow you? You said you're working on a podcast at the moment. You've got a book coming out one day.
No, bro, I also want to say I'm proud of you. I'm glad that you've done this. I'm glad that you've found some positivity in what sounds like a series of very difficult events. This thing that happened to me with the near-death experience and all the blah, 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 not only has manifested in a physical change, I feel very differently about a lot of things. I for example, I stopped drinking because initially it was just not allowed on keto. I was like, look, I got to lose a bunch of weight and I'll drink again later. It was lockdown. Alcohol was banned already. So I was like, it was a perfect, I couldn't get alcohol. I was happy to not drink because I'm not really like a oak that has to drink. I hadn't drank for a few weeks and I was like, cool, well, this is fine. But I then continued not drinking because I wanted to change things about my life. I then realized that like my calling is to make children's books, and I've published 2 of them. You can check them out at turtlebirdbooks.com. I've got more on the way. I'm trying to transition my sort of work life away from media and marketing and advertising, which I still do to pay the bills, into like talking, which I've always done as a semi-paid hobby as a voice artist and as one of Gareth Cliff's co-hosts and a person who does a podcast. So I started a podcast in 2020 about getting my shit together called Trying Harder. I did 4 episodes, but that was when I was in a downward spiral. So I was talking about wanting to get my shit together, but doing the opposite. So I put that on pause. I'm in the process of setting that up again. So the Trying Harder podcast will be available soon. If you've got kids or anyone you know has got kids, I've got a little startup making kids books called turtlebirdbooks.com. You can find them there. They're available worldwide and in South Africa. I'm not really here to sell those, but they are cool and it is a great passion of mine. So check that out. And yeah, man, we must just do another chat on or off camera. We must have. There's plenty more to catch up on.
No,
We can
dude,
talk about
I'm
work,
stoked
we can talk about.
yeah, I'm stoked to have reconnected with you. Like, this is what one of the beauties of this podcast for me has been, bringing these past relationships out of the woodwork and saying, hey, you guys are mates and you should reconnect with each other. So I've loved having you, loved chatting. And as you say, we must chat again. And by the way, all of these links and all of this information that Gordo's sharing below, you mentioned some very cool YouTube channels. I'm going to ask you to send me everything, bro. I'll put it down in the.
Oh shit! I have I have an Instagram profile where I post pictures of what I eat. People always ask for it. I do it every time I want to quit, and I'm like, I'm so sick of posting pictures of what I eat for like a couple of years now. Somebody messages me to say, dude, I've lost 30 kilos from following you, and it really helps. I even quit the page once, and I wrote a thing saying, guys, you can see 2 years of what I've been eating. It's all here. And then somebody was like, please no, it keeps me accountable. So hippo _ mode. And if you scroll back far enough in hippo mode, you'll see me at like 180 kilos trying to start gym again. So yeah, hippo _ mode. I just post pictures of what I eat. It's mindless, but it's you can see exactly what I eat.
It's no more mindless than any current influencer on Instagram or Facebook. So
it seems to help people, dude, and it keeps me accountable as well. So yeah.
So accountability is something we never discussed. So maybe we can do another episode at some stage about that, because I think that's such an important one. But dude, again, thank you so much for taking the time. And we'll chat again soon.
Such a pleasure, my bro. I'll speak to you soon.